Bet on Bears fans, training camp is here, and you're getting all the coverage you need here on the Chicago Bears podcast. Pat the designer, Courtney Cronin, back at it again. Courtney, we got to hear from Ryan Poles. No questions today, but did get to hear from him. Dropped a couple interesting nuggets about this team and where they're going. Got to hear from Ben Johnson today as well. Caleb Williams, Grady Jarrett. Everybody sounds so excited, but of course, that's usually how the first 2 weeks go. How are you doing today, and how excited are you about all this?
Yeah, it's here, full steam ahead, everybody in the boat, everybody in the submarine, whatever the saying is. And it carried first day of school sort of vibes because Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson talked about expectations, some pretty lofty goals that they're setting for the quarterback. But This is the time of year you do that. It makes sense. It's the first, it's the eve of training camp. They start a 6-week journey on Wednesday to become the team that they want to be. Now, will they get there? If they do, their preparation that they've been putting in throughout the off season and what they're able to default to when things get really tough, that's when we're going to tell the strength of that. But vibes seem pretty high for a team that once again won the off season, and going into Wednesday's first practice when it's real early in the morning and it's going to be hot out there. I think everybody's in that same mindset that they're ready to go and see what they have.
Yeah, everybody seems like they're all ready to go locked in. I thought the one thing leading this off, and we do want to let you guys know today's episode of the Chicago Bears podcast is brought to you by the Advantage Dealer Group. Find your next Chevy, Toyota, or Acura and drive off in under 60 minutes, or they'll make your first car payment. Also brought to you by the Hard Rock Casino, Northern Indiana, Las Vegas style gaming. Just 30 minutes from Soldier Field, exit 6 right off I-80 94. One place I think we got to start here, Courtney, is the news that Ryan Poles dropped on us. I know everybody was like, oh, Jaylon Johnson, is he holding out? Is this the beginning? We know he's not holding out, guys. He's actually dealing with an injury. Said that Ryan Poles said that he had gotten banged up doing some training this offseason and that it is going to cause him to miss a couple of weeks here in the beginning with a new defense in place and learning from Dennis Allen. Is this a concern for you at all to start the beginning of training camp, or is this kind of just what you expect from camp here?
Well, whenever you hear somebody's going to be out, one of your star players for multiple weeks, and that's the expectation, they're setting it, pretty far in advance, it seems, at the start of training camp, that's of course going to be concerning. And we don't have any details as to how he injured his leg during off-season training. That's all that Ryan Poles put out there. But I think anytime a player is out for an extended period of time, you wonder, is this going to linger into the season? Will there be any sort of concern about getting him on the field for week 1? Like, if he's able to get through his rehab and it's not a thing and that, he comes back at some point during training camp, then all those concerns dissipate. But if this is something that's going to keep him out an extended period of time, then then that's when you start to worry. But as of right now, the team says they're not overly concerned. That's a direct quote from Ryan Poles, that this is not going to have any sort of effect on him and his ability to get back on the field. But it is good to have some clarity on that it truly is, as NFI is, a non-football injury that was sustained outside. It's an injury. It's not. Yeah. It's nothing to do with the contract. I know that some people saw the comment or heard his comments from the Rich Eisen show and wanted to run with that. It is absolutely not the exact same scenario that we saw in 2022 when Roquan Smith showed up to training camp with some sort of injury and they put him on PUP amid all of the contract stuff. You can use that tool. You're not really supposed to, but you can use that tool for that circumstance, not in this circumstance. It's a legitimate injury. They're going to be without him. And, signing Trey Flowers, who's a 30-year-old cornerback. He started his career in Seattle. He's been, I believe Cincinnati was one of his destinations. Last season, he was with Jacksonville and Indianapolis. Yep. Mostly a practice squad guy, played in 5 games, but that's more depth at the position. And I think it's going to be a really good opportunity for someone like Zay Frazier and Terrell Smith. Two of the backup corners, because obviously you've got Tyreek Stevenson on one side, you've got Kyler Gordon at the nickel. Who's going to be that other corner on the outside? Because Jaylon's filling a big role in this defense, right? Like, he's going to be the press man corner who gets to, win his one-on-one matchups. He gets to shadow the number 1 receiver. Is that Tyreek Stevenson's job now? On the other side, or, the two corners that, jump out right away, are we expecting them to grab onto roles that maybe they wouldn't have been equipped to if it had been a different situation where guys weren't injured. It's going to be interesting. So I'm looking forward to seeing that all of a sudden becomes a position battle for Jaylon Johnson's job in the meantime, because they are expecting him to be back for the season. They didn't say anything that was a concern of that, but you still have preseason games to play. You've got practices you've got to get through. Somebody's got to come in and own that job and win it and hold it down while Johnson's out.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. And if anybody has to deal with it, right? Jaylon Johnson's the guy who you're least worried about being able to come in and, hey, you're going to get to do the thing that you've been wanting to do the entire time. I expect Jaylon to be very prepared, knowing how this defense is going to operate at its best. And this talent is something that we're probably worried about the least with him. I think you hit the nail on the head, though. Tyreek Stevenson, it's not just about Tyreek Stevenson coming in here and saying, hey, I can fill Jalen's shoes while he's not here. Tyreek has one of the biggest plays of last offseason. And while I think the season is skewed a little bit more because of that play in Washington, his season is viewed as a bad season. He didn't have this horrible finish to the year that anybody else right on the team didn't also contribute to. But I think that this is about proving himself to Dennis Allen, proving himself to Al Harris. When we got a chance to talk to them, there was a lot of conversation around, well, we haven't gotten our hands on him yet. We don't know what kind of player he can be. I think this is going to be incredibly important for Tyreek. And I think it does say something that they went out and they signed a guy like Trey Flowers, who, like you said, is a veteran guy who's not just somebody off of the street who's going to walk in and has no idea how this game works. You sign somebody who can come in and put the pressure on the other veterans on the team where he's trying to make a team and he's trying to put his best foot forward as well. I think that could increase the level of play from everybody in the building.
Yeah, he was a starter not that long ago. He played 17 games in Atlanta in the 2023 season, began his career with Seattle playing. He was on the right side at cornerback, and he did that for a couple of years, played a lot of games, tapered off. I have to look more into his history of the last couple of years once he bounces from Atlanta to then being mostly a backup practice squad guy last year. But a move like this signifies to me that this is not an injury that they're expecting is going to be, okay, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, and he'll be back. Like, several weeks is several weeks, and you need to have another body in to compensate for the loss of Jaylon Johnson. But whether he's on the roster or not, I'm talking about Trey Flowers, whether he ends up just being a camp body for now, or maybe he sticks, maybe he's depth, maybe it's a spot that he could, edge one of the other backup cornerbacks out for. They've got to figure out a plan in place for the other corners, though, when Jalen's not around, because Jalen's the one who they don't throw to, right? Like, what's the stat that they always like to tell us, that quarterbacks would have a better completion percentage if they threw in the dirt than throwing around Jaylon Johnson?
Yeah.
That means that that's going to be an increased workload for guys like Tyreek Stevenson, Kyler Gordon roving in the slot, and maybe they even try him at outside corner. That's something to certainly keep an eye on, because we know he can do it. He's played it before. It's just not his primary role in this defense. That's going to be intriguing to see how they want to move guys around in trying to fill this void that they have on the back end with Johnson out for a couple weeks.
I thought something else that was very important here to note from the Ryan Poles portion of the presser today was that it seems like he is pretty confident that Colston Loveland and Braxton Jones are going to be ready to go by training camp. Those were two guys that missed a good chunk, or pretty much all of the offseason program there. Colston was present. I don't know if we saw Braxton at any point out there, but Colston was at least present, kind of seeing how things are going to operate and stuff like that. But hearing that those two are ramping up, number one, let's start with Colston Loveland here. We know what Ben Johnson wants. He's told us a million times. He even said it today. I want explosive plays. Is Colston Loveland coming out here to compete for tight end one, or do you expect there to be more of a, we're going to run a lot of 12 personnel? Sounds like Ben Johnson doesn't have this playbook fully broken down for the team just yet, because they haven't been in pads.
Yeah, he said he doesn't know up front if they're going to be a gap scheme team or if they're going to be a wide zone team. I would imagine that he probably has an idea, but he's just trying to create the no expectation of this has to be this way, or I say something, and if it doesn't live up to that, then we don't have the right players. We failed as coaches. They're trying to leave things, open. And that's what you should do at the start of training camp, because you got to see how guys respond to the coaching, how they respond to the scheme, how they respond to certain assignments, and then make a determination on what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, does it fit what you're doing? Because if it doesn't, you better fix it now versus later. And I heard the comments about Colston Loveland the same way that you heard them. He's very high on this player. He likes him a lot. He said he's, one of the, hardest workers, whatever. He said
Always see him in the building.
It's like, I'm blown away by the way he approaches everything. I don't think there's a guy I saw in the building more this summer than him, and that's a credit to who he wants to be. So good sign there. He's attacking his rehab, which when the timeline has remained the same throughout the offseason. It hasn't gotten pushed back. It hasn't gotten moved up. They said training camp when he underwent surgery to repair the AC joint in his shoulder. So that's about 6 months, 6-month recovery timeline from what Colston told us. And that would line up to he should absolutely be out there tomorrow at the start of training camp. Does that mean he's going to be doing the same thing as everybody else? No, because Ryan Poles said Colston Loveland and Braxton Jones, because they haven't done any football stuff this offseason, like with the team, they're going to be going at it a little bit slower till they get up to speed. That's normal. That's what you expect. But I would think, once Colston Loveland's ready to be full go, you're going to see him with Cole Kmet on the field quite a bit. I know that, I'm of the belief that he's tight end 1 in this offense. You don't draft a tight end 10th overall to make him, take a backseat.
The other tight end.
Yeah, but just because, look at the discrepancy between Sam Laporta and Brock Wright in Detroit, pretty sizable. However, they did run a lot of 12 personnel in this offense, so I think that that's going to continue. With Johnson coming here from Detroit, that theme is the bread and butter of this offense. It's the bread and butter of the run game, being able to have good run blockers in there at the tight end position. So I think that once he's able to get up to speed, you're going to see him and Cole on the field a lot and trying to figure out what those roles are. I ultimately think that Colston Loveland is tight end 1 in this offense, but it might take a little bit for them to get there considering he is, working through this. But, I'm curious, once you get to that joint practice with the Miami Dolphins, which is the first one in 2.5 weeks, is he at full go? What kind of load is he getting in the passing game? Where are the targets coming from for him? Now you won't be able to tell you won't be able to tell till they get in pads and, won't be able to tell till he's fully at getting full reps. But I know it's not really a position battle that many people are looking at all that closely because there's left tackle. There's, certainly now what's going on in the defensive backfield at cornerback and how Jaylon Johnson's injury affects things. But I think tight end is obviously linebacker number 3. Is that as sexy as second tight end? Whoever ends up getting that position? No, probably not. But I think it's going to be one to watch for sure to see how they utilize both Colston Loveland and Cole Kmet.
Yeah, and I think the difference is, right, a lot of the teams that are tight end focused usually don't have very good wide receivers or elite wide receivers on their team. The belief is, at least now, that you've got some really good wide receivers on your team in Rome Odunze and DJ Moore. It is going to be fun to see really how he goes about utilizing them and keeping everybody involved in the game. But again, winning solves everything, right? We saw A.J. Brown last year for half of the season look like he was the most disgruntled wide receiver in the league. And it was like, we win. So who cares at the end of the day? If I walk out of here with a Super Bowl ring, I'm fine. The one thing, though, that I think is going to be very interesting to see as well, outside of just that tight end competition, I guess we could say maybe it is, or how he's going to utilize that tight end, is the left tackle competition. I thought Ben Johnson said something very poignant today. He said, listen, there are going to be some competitions that take precedent over others. I think that left tackle competition is probably the number one. And when I think it was Herb asked them, is everybody going to get a fair shake at this? Is everybody going to get an opportunity? Or once somebody wins this job, are they locked in? And what Ben Johnson said was, when Braxton Jones comes back and he's ready to go, he's going to have his opportunity to compete for this starting left tackle job. Courtney, does it feel like somebody has an advantage one way or the other? Ozzy's kind of a Poles and Johnson guy, but Braxton has played in this league before.
Yeah, I think what he said about Braxton Jones, I don't want to say it certainly didn't tip his hand to anything, but naturally the guy who has 3 years of starting experience has a leg up in the competition. But beyond that, when he said, they're going to let the competition play out and it's a clean blank slate for everybody, that shows you it is a true competition. That shows you that it's not just Braxton's job to lose. However, I do think that he, his institutional knowledge of playing this position, assuming he comes back as the same player he was before the injury, that's a big if. He hasn't been on the field doing football stuff since, and we went down against Detroit last year. It's a lot. And usually you don't have 3 players competing for a specific position. You know, Ben Johnson said he couldn't tell you a time that that's happened before, where you've got 3 bodies out there that you're constantly having to split reps with, that you're worried about, okay, who's working with the 1s today? Who's working with the 2s today? I mean, there's only so many days in the week. And usually if it's like 2 guys competing for a spot, it's this guy with the 1s one day. The next day, it's the other player with the first team unit. Now you've got 3 days of that, and maybe they end up splitting it. Maybe Braxton gets the first team reps one day, and then the next day is the 2 younger guys getting a chance to split. I don't know how they're going to break it up, but this is fascinating because there is so much at stake here. When they have flipped the offensive line in a matter of a week during the offseason, they love Darnell Wright. They're keeping him at right tackle. That was never going to, apparently never something they even wanted to entertain, even though Ryan Poles threw that out there for some reason. They've got to make sure they have this position locked down too. You can't have like 4 really good offensive linemen and then 1 weak spot. So finding that player is going to probably take, some time, because you got to give Braxton Jones a chance to get up to speed. You also have to see how your rookie handles his first training camp. There's a lot that he probably doesn't know. And same thing with Karan. This is really Karan's first training camp too, because he was hurt last year with dealing with the quad injury, or the effects of quad surgery, that he didn't really get out there until, late, as a rookie, really getting up to speed. So big opportunity there to, figure out, like, for this coaching staff, remember they said, like, once you get your 5, they want to have them set. How quickly can you get there? Because the earlier, the better. And Ryan Poles acknowledged that, not today, but earlier in the offseason.
Yeah, and I understand what Ben Johnson's saying, and I do think he wants this to be a competition. But listen, if you get into pads and Braxton Jones still hasn't found his way onto the field consistently, or maybe there's a ramp up. We know how training camp goes, Courtney, especially a training camp where you're going from one coach to another, where there's a ramp up period. You're trying to get yourself back on the field, but you get banged up. There may not be an opportunity here for Braxton Jones to win this job, because if it's day 1 in pads, day 2 in pads, whatever it is, and Aziz Pillow or Karan Amagaji go out there and they look like absolute world beaters on the left side, like, I think that we're going to have a moment in this camp very similar to what you see at the quarterback position, where Ben Johnson walks up to the podium and says, X is going to be our starting left tackle moving forward, and he's going to be getting the number 1 reps, because you know that is such a position. It feels like you have stability at every other spot on this offensive line. I don't think you could see Ozzy look great if that is how it plays out, or Karan look great and then go, well, let's give Braxton a shot and see how he looks.
Yeah, that's going to be the hard part, because, you're dealing with different timelines. We'll see tomorrow just how much work Braxton Jones is able to get in. And, the first couple of days, these are going to be lighter practices in theory. I mean, we've never seen a Ben Johnson training camp. So,
well, the mini camp practices were crazy. Yeah. We were sitting there like, this is intense.
Well, I would doubt that it goes more than like an hour and 15 tomorrow. They've got to get into a rhythm. But all that being said, we'll learn something about their coaching philosophy too. If they find something that works, do they just stick with it and not try to like toy around with other options? Now's your time. You have the luxury of time over the next 6 weeks. Even though Ben Johnson said it feels like a race, you have the time to test stuff out. So how quickly do they land on something? And if it doesn't work, if they look at a couple preseason games and the joint practices and say, I don't know, maybe we need to try somebody else in. How quickly do they hit the eject button and do something else? Because that's coaching. That's all on the people who make the decisions here on what the roster look like, coaching and front office, but specifically on field and training camp, how these coaches respond to competition that they are creating and that they're ultimately going to have to choose from.
Yeah, I want to get into some of Ben's comments, because you mentioned one there that I thought really kind of sets the tone on what the expectation here is, Courtney. Ben Johnson saying that this is a race and that it's all about getting everything right by the time the start of the season is here, so that you can go out there versus Minnesota and be fully prepared. When I heard his comments, when I hear Ryan Poles speak before that, right, and he's talking about the alignment and how everything's kind of in place now, Courtney, this doesn't sound like a team that's looking to go out there and, slowly figure it out throughout the season. This sounds like a team that is like, we have all the pieces here. Our plan is to go out here and dominate from day 1, and we have to do everything that we can in the limited time that we have to make sure that we're dominating every single play.
Yeah, and I listened to when you talk about the race, because that came up a couple times. Like, you have 6 weeks to get everything in order. And 6 weeks can seem like a whole lot of time. It can seem like a blip on the radar. And, oh my God, September 8th is here before you know it. All of that's true. But what Caleb said following up on that too, knowing, who's on the schedule week 1, 2 first-round quarterbacks from the same draft, one guy who hasn't played a snap in the NFL, one guy who has 17 games under his belt. That's going to be looked at under a microscope. Caleb knows the importance of that. But I think it was really setting the tone of what the dog days of training camp are going to look like. Like, how do you handle if there are times where things are bad during training camp, where the offense might have 2 really bad red zone periods, or the 2-minute drill on back-to-back days like we saw last year might not look so good. Like, he said that they have to find a way to get past that, to not pout about it, to, he said, get past the pouting, the anger, the complaining, and understand where we're at. I'm wondering if he's foreshadowing what he's seen from this group previously.
Yeah.
Maybe things during the practices we were not out there for during OTAs where things weren't going great, and maybe guys were frustrated and like, damn, why isn't it coming on fast enough? Maybe that's a tell. Maybe, because I think Grady Jarrett said something similar about it too, about being able to withstand all of this and go 100% every single day. And I think his term was balls to the wall every day.
Yeah.
And
he said there's no ramp up here for us.
Yeah, like, that's tough though. It's tough to maintain that. And I think that someone like Caleb, in the position that he's in, where the good days are going to look, they should in theory look good for him, unless it's a complete dominant day for the defense. And the bad days, there's going to be questions. Oh my gosh, is he not getting the playbook? Like, does he not understand this stuff? Like, was all the work in the off season for nothing? Like, I don't know. Whatever other people want to say about it, whatever the criticism is going to be. So I look at this and I say the urgency is not lost on Caleb Williams. Yes, this is his first year with Ben Johnson, but it's not like he gets a do-over. You know what I mean? He doesn't have – we're not doing the whole Trevor Lawrence, it's Caleb's second rookie season. It's his third rookie season. Like, however we've done this with the quarterback in Jacksonville, that's not the case here. And you get that feeling that, the sort of mentality that Ben Johnson brings in here, that they're ready to go. They are ready to contend. When he said the governor's off, I know some people, I put that on Twitter, like, what are you talking about, the governor? I'm like, the governor is the thing in your car that regulates speed.
Yeah.
And the second you rip that off, in theory, the car can go as fast as you want it to. So I took that to mean they're not holding anything back from Caleb. Yes, he's in year 2, but they're ready to be like, here you go. Here's the playbook. Here's everything you need to know. There's no limitations on you. And I took that to mean this is a team that thinks it can go right now. Not trying to slow play it, not trying to ease into the season, not trying to say, okay, well, we know that Minnesota's better. We know that the Green Bay Packers are better. We know that Detroit's better. They're putting themselves in position to say, we could steal something here in the division. We can create the momentum. We can put ourselves in a spot where maybe not everybody thinks that we're going to be a 9-win team, 10-win team, whatever it is. I'm not even talking about a specific benchmark, but they're looking at themselves and knowing that this is not like training camps of the past, where you were unsure about the overall product you were going to get, where you also at other times knew you had no talent out there and that the coaching staff was brand new trying to figure it out. Some of those things are true. They do have a brand new coaching staff, but they have a very talented roster. And now you got to do something with it. Like, you don't have time to waste trying to figure it out in training camp. Like, you've got to hit this and be intentional and not waste any time when training camp starts trying to get this right.
Yeah, and I thought Ben Johnson spoke to that when he said, I have I love how he said this. He slipped this in there. He said, by design, I have a very veteran coaching staff underneath me here. And it truly is. Hey, we want Ben to get in here. We want him to figure it out. We got to win now. And I think that feels like the mindset, especially when you heard Ben Johnson and Caleb's goals. They both aligned in there, but about him becoming that first 4,000-yard passer, about him having the 30 touchdowns. I thought the big one that really stood out was, I mean, you could look at a quarterback, 62% of the passes, 62.5% of the passes Caleb Williams completed last year. We know the turmoil that went on. We know everything that happened. You could say that's pretty good for a quarterback right there. Ben Johnson's like, no. The goal for him this season is 70%, completing 70% of his passes in the 2025 season. I believe Jared Goff completed 72% of his passes with Ben Johnson. So in Ben's mind, this is not something that is unattainable. It's something I've seen my quarterback do. I think, again, that goes to the conversation of pushing Caleb and kind of expecting Caleb, hey, Yes, it's year 2. Yes, this is a new staff. Yes, this is a new system. None of that matters. You got to go. You got to be better.
It's a lofty goal because there were
Very.
5 quarterbacks, 5 starters last year who hit it, none of which were first-year starters. The year before that, there was 1 quarterback, Jake Browning in Cincinnati, who had been a backup, but obviously that was the season he took over for Joe Burrow after Burrow, I think, had the wrist injury that put him out. 1 quarterback in 2023 completed above 70% of his passes. It's not to say that it's not realistic, but it is a lofty goal. And now's your time of year to do it. Like, you shouldn't be doing this like a couple of weeks later, like, oh, after we've seen what we're doing in training camp, now we're going to set goals. No, now's the time. You've had the off season, all of spring to figure out where are we going with this group. Now you're going to fine tune some things. And the homework assignments that Caleb had this offseason gave him a chance to try to figure out, where his weaknesses are, what he still needs to work on to be able to get that 70% completion number. And I think one thing he mentioned about just not wanting to be the cat who, the young cat, the overzealous guy who's looking for the big play or the home run all the time, take the 5 yards. Helps your completion percentage for sure. To go for the check down or go into the flat, find somebody for a quick pickup of 5 instead of getting sacked. All of those things go hand in hand in cutting down the sack numbers and for him reaching that goal. But I was a little stunned that they put a number on it today, because usually they keep things pretty close to the vest about what exactly they want to see from Caleb, where they think he needs to grow, and to put a figure on it, even with a caveat of, well, look, we don't expect him to throw 70% every single day in practice, but the more you do it in practice, the more you'll probably have a better chance you'll have to doing it during the game. That was emphasized for sure.
And he said, Ben, he did say, right, the caveat of you don't have to do it every day, but when we get into some of those drills, you should be 70% on your passes. I love the fact that this coaching staff, Courtney, is not shying away from any of the stigmas that have come with previous Bears regimes. And they're not sitting there saying, when we ask about, well, what'd you see based off of this last year? They go, I wasn't here last year. But they're not hiding from the things that have kind of been the bugaboos of the Chicago Bears going back. I mean, some of these stats, 100 years, if you really want to go back in on them. Ben Johnson's attacking him. He's being very upfront and intentional about saying 4,000-yard passer, 30 touchdown quarterback. These are the things where I guess for other teams, they're not that impressive, but they are the benchmarks that tell you if you are truly improving here in Chicago. And it could be the difference between, if we're talking about Caleb having a season like this, you're talking about competing for the playoffs. You're talking about winning a lot of football games and being one of the best teams in football. And that, I love that they're not shying away from that. But like you said, incredibly lofty goal.
I think if you were to ask them and get people to talk about this, do 4,000 yards really matter? Ultimately, if you got somebody to give you an honest answer, if they're winning games, the 4,000 yards doesn't matter. No, if he was at 3,700 yards, yes, exactly. Caleb just wouldn't be on anybody's top 10 quarterback list if he did that and they won a lot of games. But, in reality, there is nothing more important to this franchise and to this offense and to Caleb than cutting down on those sacks. 4,000 yards be damned. 30 passing touchdowns a year doesn't matter. If you are cutting down on 68 sacks, which he has to do, you won't survive in this league. The offense won't survive if that's happening. Then that's a win. That's a win in its own right, and that usually will lead to good things happening on the field. Does that mean that they go to the playoffs? Maybe, maybe not. But I think 4,000 yards, when he mentions that, it's low-hanging fruit because it's never been done. Caleb's somebody who wants to take on the tough goal of doing something that sets him apart from everybody else that has come through here in his quarterback's history to be a quarterback. But I don't ultimately think it's really that important to this franchise and to, this coaching staff if they're winning games. If you're a 9-win team and he doesn't hit that mark, it's a benchmark because it gives you something to check for. You know what I mean? To continue to check back in. How we do this month? How we do this week? How we do this practice? To breaking it down big to small picture. But I don't think that it has to, you can define success in his season this year, even if he doesn't hit those goals, if he's playing on time, if his footwork is clean, if he's avoiding sacks, if he's not going for the home run play every single time and trying to just play within the confines of this offense, all the things we talked about this offseason, mean way more than any specific stat line of 4,000 yards for him.
Only thing I would push back on it, and not to say really push back. I do agree with you. The wins are what's going to matter the most. The only thing I would say though is if he is at that 70% completion percentage, it would be pretty tough not to get it. Right? I think that the true goal is probably the 70%, because if you do that, everything else is going to come. You're going to end up throwing. I mean, Tua had 19 touchdowns on his 72% last year, and he only played 11 games. You're going to end up being over 4,000 yards, over 30 touchdowns, because your offense is moving in an incredibly efficient way that we haven't seen here in Chicago.
I mean, you look at these guys who did it last year. Obviously, Tua had the concussion, so he was out. He was limited to 11 games, but he set the league mark at 72.9% last year. Jared Goff was on a playoff team. Baker Mayfield took his team to the playoffs. Joe Burrow nearly had his team in the playoffs. I mean, that was any other season that's an MVP level season for him if the defense doesn't just collapse. And then, Seattle was on the cusp and they just missed it. I feel like you could almost point to that Seattle situation where they go 10-7, they miss it in the NFC West and say that could very well be the Bears, because what did the NFC? I mean, obviously the NFC North got 3 teams in last year, but it was the Rams, representing from the West last year. And, Seattle was right there. It's a tough division, but I think it was a little bit too much, too little, too late for them. But that's still a good season, a great season by some respects, of having a completion percentage that high and showing the growth. Because Geno Smith had to, he has the comeback player of the year the year before, and then went through some rough patches last year, but still finished top 5 in completion percentage. If Caleb's anywhere close to that this year, given where he was a year ago, 30, bottom 30 of like 36 qualifying quarterbacks, he was 32nd or 33rd. That would be a win in its own right. I don't think you can project out, well, you hit these marks, automatic 10-win season. Yeah. But if they can get to 9, they can get to 10, then they're in a very good position to make some noise in the NFC North as a wild card team.
Well, I mean, even what did the Bengals finish with last year? 8, or did they get to 9? Did they finish above 500 last year? I know they just ended up missing the playoffs, but like, it is one of those things where it's like, if your offense is moving that efficiently, now it's like you can set some numbers to it. I'm not saying that
they
always
were 9-8. They were 9-8 last year.
And that's with what we all agree is one of the worst defenses in the world, with Trey Hendrickson on it. The Trey Hendrickson situation gets a lot more interesting now. But like, there's so much to me that 70% probably is the number that Ben Johnson is truly trying to hammer home here for Caleb Williams, because as you mentioned, all the quarterbacks, right? Nobody would look at Seattle last year and say they had this world beater season, 10-7. We literally look at the Bengals and go, it was Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and the rest of them. 9-win season, right? So I truly feel like that could be the number that they're trying to hammer home here for Caleb, that if he gets to that, everything else will come with it because of the efficiency of that. Looking at the rest of the presser, though, was there anything else that really stood out to you? Was there anything else wanted to hammer home today on the pod?
I think that just the whole alignment aspect, we've talked about it between Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles just a little bit, because Poles mentioned about his contract extension and being able to carry out, what's going to be carrying out his vision for this roster long term. The alignment between quarterback and head coach, and all that Caleb has done over the last, how long have we been gone for? Like 6 weeks since minicamp ended, and the last OTA. Him being in consistent communication with his head coach on the phone. Obviously they need to trust each other. And what Ben Johnson said about that Thunderbirds show on Netflix. Yeah. And like they're obviously like life or death things with the Air Force, and, very dangerous job, but like drawing the parallels from that to what the Bears are trying to do. Like, you guys have to build that trust in the next 6 weeks, or it's not going to work this season. And it starts with the quarterback and his play caller building trust with each other. And what we heard from Caleb, like very specific about the homework assignment that Ben Johnson gave him this offseason. So first part of it was like cleaning up his footwork, so making sure his feet are timed up with the play. That can limit sacks. Like, it's not just like these all have tangible effects, which I think by and large get the sack numbers down. So he was doing, spending a lot of time in the playbook. He said if you can't spend an hour a day in it, 30 to 40 minutes, whatever it was, you shouldn't be doing it. So good. You have somebody who's bought into the process. That's number one.
No Kyler Murray, ladies and gentlemen.
The footwork stuff is really important. And then on top of that, when he's talking about trying to, perfect the short throws to his left that he had missed during OTAs, what does that do? Those are checkdowns. Those are short throws that help avoid pressure coming at you. And I think that cuts down on sacks potentially. All of it has a purpose. And that's what it felt very intentional with the things that they were giving him in specific to do this offseason. And if all of that goes well, if all of it goes according to the plan they have, then that should yield a much more efficient quarterback, but also somebody who's not getting sacked as much. That is the biggest bugaboo for this team, specifically for Caleb. And he's got to cut down on that number this year. It's of critical importance for the health of the offense that he does. And I think the homework assignment was shedding some light on how are they trying to do this when you're not here, when you're not on the field, because there's other stuff that you can do to help with that too.
Were you like me when Ryan Poles said you guys are going to be seeing a lot of me and basically just didn't take questions? My mind instantly went, okay, so you're signing someone, because the only time we really talk to you again is when you're signing someone. Are you expecting there to be some more signings? Are you expecting there to maybe be a big signing that he's got to do a press conference style for here? That's kind of when I heard that, I was like, so you're not taking questions today. He wasn't going to tell us about his contract anyway, but we don't really talk to you again during training camp.
Yeah, no, he'll talk at cut down day, but that's a very interesting observation, because I think you look at this roster and you could point to a couple positions where they still feel like the jury's yet decided.
Edge rusher, right? They added Tano Pass and Yoda back. Yeah.
And they added a couple guys today just with just for depth, I think. Obviously the Trey Flowers addition at cornerback and then everything else. A couple on the defensive line. And they added one, they waived one, whatever it is. But I think it signals that just with you're going to be seeing me more, he's here to stay. I know there were some Bears fans who were questioning why at 15 and 36 they decided right now was the time to give him a contract extension. The stability factor matters to this organization. And I know it seems like it doesn't need to when have they ever been aligned before? You know what I mean? There's only been a couple of times in recent years where head coach and GM are on
never
the
with the
same
quarterback
trajectory. And
never with the quarterback.
Never with the quarterback. Often it's somebody's off by a year. So being able to see Caleb Williams, Ryan Poles quarterback, Ben Johnson, Ryan Poles head coach. Ryan Poles now here in the thick of this for as long as they're going to be here, at least as long as the head coach is scheduled to be here. Who knows about what happens with the quarterback? That's what I took that to mean, that, I'm here for the long haul. This is my team. This is his ownership of this team, and he's got a chance to see his vision through.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening here. It does feel like this is my team, and it seems like this team is following his mindset. Hopefully that plays out to some wins here this season, and definitely some wins on the training camp field, because, Courtney, we've had a lot of times where we're sitting there going, this looks exactly like it looked last week, and that's not a great place to be. So hopefully we see a lot more wins this year. We'll keep you covered with everything here on the Chicago Bears podcast. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. For Courtney Cronin, had a stroke there. It's your boy Pat the Designer back at it again. Y'all stay safe out there, Chicago. Bear down. One love. Peace.